Hey, what's up everyone? I'm Praetorian and welcome to my Hearts of Iron 4 tutorial series. I did a beginner guide series when the game first came out, and obviously there have been a lot of changes to the game, a lot of new additions and changes to its existing mechanics. And a lot of people have been asking me to make an updated series where I cover, some of these changes as well as some of the new things that have been added, some of the new mechanics and features. So we're finally going to be doing that, and we're going to be starting with the most requested video tutorial, and that is the air war. The air system has changed a lot since the game first came out, so my tutorial on it has become quite outdated. Now, before we get started, I would like to say that we are playing with a real save that we did a Let's Play. This is a United Kingdom Let's Play with the 1.5 patch with Awakening the Tiger. I'm sure this will eventually become outdated as well, but for right now, it's the air system is completely up to date in here. And this is a real Let's Play. We are currently in the year 1941, and we are deep in the Battle of Britain as the Germans have conquered France as well as Italy, and they are proceeding to bomb our ships that go through the channel, as well as bomb all of our factories and infrastructure inside of our own country. Now, this is not a new game, but one tip I would like to give you when you do start a new game, one of the first things you're probably going to want to do is delete all of your air wings so that you can build the air wings out yourself and get them assigned, so you don't have some air wing over there assigned in like Asia and you don't even know about it. So one thing I really like to do is just go into this air mode here and just take all of the air wings that are not on carriers and just select them here like so. You just grab all these guys up and they'll all come up like this, and then we can just delete them to span the air wings, and then we'll be able to create our air wings. So that's one suggestion I'd give you. Always do that when you first start a new campaign so you're in control of them. And in addition, a lot of those beginner air wings have like weird numbers, so you're going to want to build your own. We've got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get started, guys. So one of the first things we're going to want to go ahead and do is get an air wing assigned here. In order to assign an air wing, you're going to want to click on one of your air bases. These little icons here are your air bases. Now, the size of an air base can range between 1 to 10. Each size level allows 200 extra planes on that airbase. And you see here we have a size 10 airbase here that does allow us to have 2,000 planes, so that's a maximum number that you're going to be able to have on an airbase at a time. Now, airbases are a state level building. So if we were to click on this, you'd see that they are state level buildings and not province levels. So that means you have one airbase for each state, and where that airbase is going to be located is just determined by the game. So you don't get to choose which province you want that airbase to be built in. You can only choose the state. As we can see, we have level 10 airbases throughout the whole of southern England here, and we're going to go ahead and use those to build our first air wing. To build a new air wing, you're going to click on this Add Air Wing button here, and then you'll actually decide which planes you want to put into that air wing. Now, an air wing can only consist of one type of plane. If you want a guide on plane types, we're going to be going over that at the end of the video, because it's something that I think most people are familiar with, and it's also something I covered a lot in the previous tutorial. Not much has changed in regards to that, so we'll save that for the end of the video. So we need to get an air wing of fighters here to cover the English Channel. Now we can see here all the different types of planes that we have, as well as their models. We're going to be using these Spitfire Mark 1s that we designed over here. We're going to put 200 planes here. Now, in previous versions of the game, there was a modifier that made the planes perform better if they had more air wings. So theoretically, it was better to have, instead of having an air wing of 200 planes, it was better to have 200 air wings of one plane, just because there is that modifier. That is no longer the case. They have removed that, so now your air wing size doesn't actually matter. So the determining factor for your air wings should be those sizes for the air bases. So because you can do 200 planes per level, you want something that fits into that well. 100 planes per air wing, 200 planes per air wing, 200's what I personally use unless I don't have enough planes to do that. So 200 is what I like. So we're going to go ahead and put 200 fighters over here. That is going to cost us 4,000 manpower, as we see down here. Planes do require manpower. That's not just their pilots. That's everything you need to support those pilots. And then we're going to click OK. Now we have our first air wing up here. So taking a look at our options here, we can always click on the plane here to see its stats and what planes it is composed of. We can also change the number of planes that we want here. So if we wanted to add 50 or, take away another 100 or something, we could change that up this way. Finally, we can select an ace here if we wanted to. Now there are two types of aces, those for fighters and those for bombers. They cannot be assigned in the category that doesn't fit them. That's why these are grayed out, because these are for bombers. So we can only assign the fighter ones. And as you might notice, that some of these guys are better than others. They do have skill ratings. So this guy is clearly better, Alexander One Wing Plumber. So we'll want to get him assigned so he'll give those nice bonuses that we can see to air attack, max airspeed, and agility to our fighter wing. To assign him to the English Channel, we just need to have him selected and then assign him. And you'll notice there's no little button, there's nothing to tell us that he's assigned besides here that we see that he's deploying. It is going to take a little bit of time to deploy. Well, the reason why we're not seeing any indicator that he's assigned here is because he's not assigned to a mission just yet. Now we're going to do that with these top buttons up here. So for fighters, we have two different types of missions they can do. And those two types of missions are air superiority and interception. All the other buttons are grayed out. They are not an option for our fighter wing. Now what these missions do is covered here in the tooltips, but essentially air superiority is just your fighter's attempt to gain superiority in that air region. So they will target fighters first, since fighters add the most air superiority. Bombers add a small amount of air superiority. I think it's 50% of what the fighters do, so it's a lot less. So they're going to target those fighters that are in the air region first, attempt to shoot those down, and then after the fighters have all been shot down, then they will attempt to shoot down bombers. The other mission available to the fighters is the interception. Now interception is the exact opposite. They're going to target the bombers first, and they won't fight the fighters at all. They won't even fight them. They'll just attempt to shoot down bombers. So this mission we're only going to use in a few circumstances. For instance, if we were defending our homeland from strategic bombers, then we would want to have them on interception. And then the main reason why you're probably going to use it is if you don't have enough planes to compete with the enemy. Then you're going to want them targeting those bombers rather than the fighters, because you know you have no hope of achieving air superiority. So in this case, we are attempting to achieve air superiority over the English Channel, so we're going to get him doing the air superiority mission. We can now see that we have 200 planes doing air superiority in the English Channel. Now you'll notice there's a couple other buttons up here that we can assign. Now this one is whether or not our planes are going to stop flying their mission based on their casualties. As of right now, we have it on no retreat. That means if this air wing has one plane in it, it is going to be overhead fighting. I often usually like to change this to normal operations. Why default is not normal operations, I couldn't tell you, considering that it is normal, so you think it would start at default, but it's not. This means that they're going to fly the missions as long as the air wing has 25% of their strength. So if we have 50 planes or more, then they will be flying overhead. Otherwise, they will not fly their mission. The second button determines whether we execute our missions during day, night, or both. So in this case, it'd be just flying overhead during the day, just in the night, or both. So the difference between the day and the night for your planes is that during night, it's going to be harder to target other planes. So that means that the fighters protecting the area, for instance, if you were bombing, doing a strategic bombing run on the enemy, during the night, it would be harder for the enemy's fighters to detect your bombers. But at the same time, it also has a penalty to bombing. So that means your bombers are going to be a lot less effective. This is one of those things that, they're not going to be as good at bombing, but they will face less casualties. While of course the daytime is the exact opposite. We're going to see more casualties. It's going to be easier for these fighters to detect us and to attempt to shoot us down, but our bombers are going to be a lot more effective. Overall, most people just play with day and night on all the time, unless you're really concerned about the casualties of your bombers. Pretty much you're usually going to have it on missions executing both during the day and during the night. Now there are some other buttons up here at the top that we may need to be aware of. The fact that you can split the selected air wing into two and split it into two wings of 100, just make it a little bit easier to do that. You can merge air wings that are in the same air base here. We can reorganize the air wing if we wanted to, which if we were to click that, just change what planes are going to be in there. Now you should be aware that the air wings are always going to update to the latest model, so there's really no point on attempting to use older model planes because they're always going to update to the latest model. We can also assign the priority of this air wing when it comes to getting newer planes. So if, for instance, you only had so many good planes and you wanted to make sure they went to this theater, the English Channel, first, because this is maybe the most important theater in your war right now, then you'd put them on a high priority and then lower the air wings in other areas that aren't as important. And of course we can deselect all, and we can also have the air wing hold, which would tell it to no longer conduct its mission. As you can see, its mission has already been removed. But yeah, let's go ahead and assign him again, because we actually do want him conducting his mission. And 200 air wings are probably, or 200 fighters, excuse me, are not going to be enough there. So we're going to go ahead and assign some more, and then we're going to do the same thing that we did with those guys to give them 400 fighters conducting their mission. And we do have some more aces, so we're going to get one of them assigned as well. Now we have our submarines going through the channel right now, attempting to sink German convoys that go through here. So if we wanted to give them a little bit of air assistance, we're going to go ahead and add them, give them some naval bombers here. So we'll assign a naval bomber wing. We do everything the same way that we did with the fighters. Go ahead and put them on normal operations, which, by the way, I forgot to mention, you can do low intensity as well, which means they'll only fly missions if they're 50% strength, so they would only fly if they had 100 or more fighters. And then we're going to assign them to the naval strike mission. Now, while doing the naval strike mission, they will attempt to sink any ships that are in the area. Now, they have a very low chance of detecting those ships, so it's difficult for them to sink them. However, if they are engaged in combat, they are very likely to help out in that combat. So one of the best ways to be able to have your naval bombers assisting is to also have the Navy out here patrolling. So let's go ahead and deploy them to the English Channel so that they can start doing naval strikes. Now, naval strike missions will always be done over a sea region. Let's say you wanted to sink ships that are in port. Well, then you'd use a separate mission, the port strike mission. Now, the port strike mission will always be used on a land target. So let's say we know that the German submarines are based over here in Normandy, then we would want to send our naval bombers over there to start sinking them. We would assign them to northern France, and instead of having to do a naval strike mission, we would do the port strike. Now, the port strike does not bomb the actual port, so we're not going to do any damage to the ports. You would need to do strategic bombing to do that. We're only going to be targeting ships that are in port. So this is a question I hear a lot. Are the ports considered part of the land, or are they part of the sea? Which do you target? You do target the land in order to do that port strike. Now, one of the things you're going to see here as we have zoomed out is this little yellow line that goes all around the airbase where our planes are stationed. Well, that is the range of those planes, so it shows you exactly where they're going to be able to reach. Now let's go take a look at the air war and how it affects land combat. We could always take one of these guys and move them. They can always move, so if we wanted him to go here instead, we could click on that and he would deploy there. And if he was already here, then he would instantly start moving over there. It would take a bit of time for him to get there, and how long it takes does depend on how far away he is. And you can always just get rid of the air wing and then assign him there. If we were to get rid of those fighters there, just disband them, all they do is go right back to our stockpile over here. Okay, so let's get those bombers doing their job. They're going to be doing the naval strike over here while we go get engaged in some combat. Now, one of the few places that our troops are currently engaged in is over here in Greece. We are attempting to save Greece so they don't capitulate by protecting Athens in this one province here, where the Axis have had extreme difficulty attempting to attack us and take this land here. And we've also had air support this entire time that has been assisting us quite a bit. Now, the air superiority bonus is incredibly important, guys. I cannot emphasize how important it is to have air superiority in any area that you are currently fighting in. Now, if we were to zoom out here and hit F3, which will put us into the strategic air mode. We can also click this button down here. All these are the map mode buttons, and this is for the air. We can take a look at how we're doing in Greece right now. Now, gray means that nobody has air superiority in the area, which probably means that there are no planes there. Red means the enemy has air superiority. Green means that we have air superiority. As you can see throughout the Mediterranean, we do dominate in the airs, while Greece here, you'll notice, is yellow. That means that this is contested. Both the enemy and ourselves have planes here, and neither have been able to achieve air superiority. Now, the reason that air superiority is so important for land combat is because when the enemy has air superiority, your troops will get a penalty to their defense and their breakthrough, as well as their movement speed. So it's pretty substantial, guys. It can help you out quite a bit, so you want to achieve air superiority in any land region where you are seeing extensive combat. Now, if we were to click on Greece to see exactly what is going on here with the air superiority, there's a little bar here, and this determines where air superiority is at. We are currently at 58.4%, so we are winning the air war, but have not been able to achieve air superiority just yet. Now, this is the air combat screen. This is one of the new additions that has changed quite a bit. that we needed to cover. So this will show you all the current planes that you have active in your area. We have 200 active fighters. These are our own planes. These are 100 active bombers. You can also see which country those are from. So all these are from the United Kingdom. And we can see our active support planes as well. And then these are the anti-air guns, which of course are built in the province. And we'll be taking a look at those here in a little while. So we can also see the current planes that the enemy has as well as their anti-air. And they don't have any here. And you notice that, it still says they have air power here. More than likely they had planes and they moved them out, and this hasn't updated just yet. We can see our air detection in the region and everything that is affecting it, which is important for locating the planes in order to shoot them down. Our mission efficiency is right here. Efficiency affects everything with the planes on how capable they are. We have 17% efficiency right now, and that's largely because our planes are flying from so far away they cannot effectively cover the entire region, which we can kind of take a look at here. Well, if we were to delete this real quick or just close this, we can take a look that our planes, specifically the bombers that we have here, the close air support, are not able to cover most of Greece. However, they can cover the provinces that we're fighting in, so that's what's important. So one final thing that I would like to mention on this topic is the fact that close air support missions are affected by terrain. So certain terrain will reduce the efficiency of your close air support missions. For instance, forest, I think even mountains can affect it as well, as can city provinces. In addition to that, the efficiency of all missions can be affected by poor weather. So rain or snow will reduce the efficiency of your air missions. Now going back to that combat screen, we can see the same thing as over here. We can see for the enemy, their average mission efficiency as well as their air detection. And then we can see how effective our missions have been, how well they have done on the last day and the last sorties, the last time they flew out. We can see their missions, we can see the enemy air missions as well, and we can just specifically target certain types of missions to see how effective those were. So the final thing that you're going to need to be aware of in here is the details. If you click on this, this will tell you exactly how well you've been doing over the days, the months, and the years. So if we see just over the last several days here, how many fighters we've lost, how many support planes we've lost, as same with the enemy here, it gives you a good gauge on how well your planes have been doing. Obviously our bombers have been highly disrupted. The enemy fighters have been making sure that we're not able to bomb the enemy. So since we do not have enough fighters here to gain air superiority, we would want to add some more fighters. However, the problem is that this airbase only holds 200 fighters. Now we could add more. There's nothing stopping us from adding more fighters and overstuffing the airbase. However, you get extreme penalties for doing so to your efficiency. Now you may have noticed that there is now a little red bubble here. This is telling us that our planes are currently helping our troops out in combat and that the troops are actually losing that combat. That's why it's red rather than green. We can click on this and you'll get access to the battle screen, same as if we were sitting in the land combat mode. Still access that same battle screen here. It's just telling us that our planes are currently helping in this combat. And looking at the combat screen, you'll see that we have 86 support planes currently. The Greeks are the ones that are attacking right now. We did not use our own troops to attack, but these are our planes assisting in this attack. We can see exactly how many of our planes have been shot down. We haven't lost any yet, and we can see how much damage our planes have done to the enemy's organization, which is this green one here, and their strength. So far they've done 2 points of damage to their organization and 1 point of damage to the enemy's strength. Now in the combat, you're going to notice 2 little modifiers here that have planes. If we look over this red one on the enemy side, they are getting a penalty because we have enemy air superiority. That's what I told you guys about, where the defense and the breakthrough are going to be affected, as well as the speed of their divisions. Now if we look under the Greek general, we'll see that he also has a little green modifier over here, and this is the air support modifier. This effectively increases the defense and the attack of your units, and that's in addition to the damage that the planes are doing. So pretty good bonus overall, and you're going to get that from providing air support to your troops by doing that close air support mission that we are currently executing here in Greece. Now we assigned the close air support mission the same way that we did the other missions with our close air support planes. We assigned them to Greece and we told them to do the close air support mission. This close air support mission means that the planes are going to bomb the enemy troops during combat. They do not bomb if there is no combat. So they can only assist in combat. If you assign them air support and there's no combats going on, then they effectively don't do anything. Now you'll notice that there's been this little button on all of the air regions where we have planes located It says more ground crews. Now this allows us to spend and maintain 20 of our command power. That's why we're sitting at 80 right now. That does reduce it by 20. So if I was to also do it here, we'd notice it would drop down to 60 now. And that's the maximum amount of command power I'll be able to reach while I do these missions. You can easily just stop doing it at any time that you like, just by clicking that button. And what that does is increase the air efficiency of all your missions by 10%. So it is a significant little boost and can be worth the command power if you have nothing else to use it for, and if you really need to win the air war in that region. Now we're going to swing on back over to our homeland and see how our bombing campaign has been going in the channel. And you can see that we've already seemed to have done something here. We have assisted with 20 of our naval bombers to sink 8 German convoys that have been going through here. And a large reason why we were probably able to find those is because of those 23 submarines that engaged the convoys first. Now it is time to look at some of the other missions available to us. The next one I want to take a peek at is strategic bombing. So we're going to need to get a air wing of strategic bombers assigned here. We're just going to do 100. We do not have a lot of strategic bombers here. Now strategic bombers have a very long range. If we zoom out here, we can see that they can cover all of Germany. So we could easily bomb anywhere in Germany that we want. We can see that there's already somebody bombing. I believe that's France that is bombing Eastern Germany right now. So let's say we wanted to instead bomb Western Germany. We would assign them over there. We're going to get them doing the normal operations, and then we're going to assign them to strategic bombing. Now, one of the features added in the recent patch is the ability to select exactly what you want to bomb inside of this state here with your strategic bombing. And in order to do that, we're going to click this button right here, and it's going to open up the priorities. Now these are just priorities. Strategic bombing is still pretty inaccurate, so it doesn't mean that they're not going to bomb other stuff in the state. It just means they're going to try their best to target the priorities that you set. Now, as of right now, nothing is prioritized, but let's say we wanted to prioritize only factories here, then we could do that. We could prioritize the infrastructure as we are doing down here in Greece, which we'll take a look at now with our strategic bombers. I'm not sure where I have them assigned. I believe they are assigned right here. Yes, sir. These are tactical bombers, actually. Tactical bombers can provide strategic bombing as well. So we have our tactical bombers doing strategic bombing over here, and they are focusing on bombing the infrastructure because at one time the enemy had a lot of troops over here in Greece. So we were hoping to damage the infrastructure in order to decrease the amount of supply that they had in the area. And they were pretty effective in doing that. The Germans eventually pulled all their troops out of here because of how bad the attrition was. So now back to our current air wing of strategic bombers, we could focus on bombing their air bases if we wanted to ensure that they didn't have anywhere to put their planes. We could bomb fortifications in preparation for a upcoming attack. So this allows a lot of customization, quite helpful. Now, of course, if we wanted to provide a little bit of air support over here so that our strategic bombers wouldn't take as many casualties. Now, I'll talk about this in a little bit when we go over the plane types, but essentially we would want to assign these heavy fighters because they're the only ones that would have the range, and even them, they can't even cover all of Western Germany here. So what I might want to do is instead have my strategic bombers cover Northwest Germany so those heavy fighters can actually give them a little bit of assistance. And we can change these up very easily. Just select these two, have them over here. Our heavy fighters currently aren't doing anything right now. Let's go ahead and make sure that they're providing air superiority bonus over there to help protect our strategic bombers. Now there are two missions that we can't really go over at the moment, and that's the kamikaze strike, and we can't go over that because it's only available to a few countries. Japan and the Soviet Union are the two that come to mind, and they can do the kamikaze strike once they get the related national focus. And this just essentially has your, what it was historically. Your planes will sacrifice themselves to do massive amounts of damage to ships. So you will use that like the naval strike. It will be in a sea region, and it'll cost you a lot of planes. However, it's going to do a lot more damage than the regular naval strike mission. And the other one that we can't go over is the air supply. This is done by your transport. It's one of the few things they can do. You can assign them to do an air supply mission in a region, the same as you would do any other mission, and what it does is it increases the supply in that region. They're essentially dropping in supplies to the troops there. It's not very effective. It's not very useful for large areas with lots of units in there to try and supply massive amounts of units. The amount of supply it increases is not a lot. What it's usually most effective at doing is when you have paratroopers who are perhaps behind enemy lines and cut off from supply, but you don't really have too many troops in that area besides them, then that little bit of supply that you're getting from the air supply can be enough to keep those paratroopers supplied so they don't get destroyed. So those are all the missions for your air wings. So let's go over a few other things that need to be considered. First of all, you'll notice that we also have a little airbase button for our fleet here. That is because we have multiple carriers here. So our carriers can have carrier planes, and they have to have this specific model, and I'll show you how we go about getting those. But only specific models of planes can go on there, and they'll have a little indicator here that tells you that this is the type of plane that can go onto a carrier. But other than needing different planes, the air bases on the carriers effectively act the same as any other air base, with a couple exceptions. When it comes to doing naval strike missions, you don't actually need to assign your planes to do that when they're in combat. So if our fleet is patrolling and finds itself in combat, our planes will automatically assist that fleet. The fighters will fly and try and attempt to shoot down any enemy aircraft, and the bombers will attempt to bomb the enemy fleet. So in order to have those planes assist the Navy, you don't need to do anything, but there will be sometimes some circumstances where you want your planes to help out in a certain region. For instance, if we were about to do a naval invasion of northern Germany, we might want to bring our carrier over to this province here so that they can provide air superiority. And if we had close air support planes, we could also have them provide close air support to assist our invasion. Now, if you do have planes assigned to an area, they will continue to cover that area rather than assist your fleet for as long as they're within range. So if we were to move our carrier fleet from over this province to over here, where those planes no longer can reach that area you've assigned to, then they will go back to standing by. You don't need to do anything in order to remove them from that area. However, let's say you don't want those planes to leave. You want them to stay assisting there, to fly when the carrier leaves, to fly to an airbase that can allow them to assist there. Then you'd lock this right here. And it tells you right there, air wings will not follow this carrier when it leaves the region they operate in. So they will attempt to stay there and attempt to continue bombing there, because the carrier planes are the only planes that can operate on a carrier. However, they can also operate in regular air bases in a pinch if you need them. However, it should be mentioned that they are often not as good as the land-based planes. A few other things affecting the air war that we're going to want to go over are, of course, radar stations and anti-aircraft guns. So both radar and anti-aircraft guns are state-level buildings, like the air base that we went over before. If we take a look at the anti-air here, you can see we can have up to 5 anti-air in this state, and we are completely maxed out here. And you'll see that they do a damage reduction by 60%. So the buildings are going to take 60% less damage than they normally would. In addition to providing that bonus, they can also shoot down planes that are attempting to bomb that area. They do not shoot down planes that are flying over it. So let's say Germans had planes over here that were bombing London. Well, London is a completely separate area, so the AA guns here would not shoot those planes as they flew overhead. They only attempt to shoot down planes that are actually bombing in that area. So luckily we have anti-air here, so they would be able to provide support, but of course over here we do not have any anti-aircraft guns, so if they were to start bombing over there, they would be able to completely nullify the fact that we have AA protecting our place here. And of course, last but not least is the radar stations. Now, radar are extremely important for the air war. They increase your air detection, which is your ability to find the enemy planes. So very useful for your fighters in order to find either enemy fighters or enemy bombers. Now, their range is shown here on the map. It's obviously not very far because we only have a level 1, but if we had a higher level, which we do not in any of these areas, then that region would be much larger that we're able to cover. And the level of radar that you can build and actually go much higher than 2, and that is determined by your technology level in radar. Another thing I'd like to go over in regards to the air war is variants, creating variants. So we have 500 air experience just sitting here ready to be used. We're going to go into our production screen and we're going to try and create a variant of one of our planes. Right now we have the Spitfire Mark 1s. We've already created a variant of these guys, so they've already been modified a bit. To create a variant, we're going to click on the equipment, we're going to click on create variant, and then we can see what we have going here. And we can spend that air experience to create a more efficient plane. What we're going to do is we're going to tick these guys' reliability up, we're going to tick their range up, and then we're going to tick their weapons and engines up as well, and that's what we're going to leave it as. I like this a lot. We might be able to go here, but that is going to affect our reliability, so let's just keep it like this, and that's how we create a variant. Those are going to be the Spitfire Mark 2s. We could have named them whatever we wanted, and we'll decommission these and then have those Mark 2s begin to start producing so that we'll have better planes for our war against the Germans. So that pretty much covers everything I wanted to go over. If there's anything I missed in regards to the air war, let me know down in the comments. We can make a little note of it. I'm pretty sure that's just about everything, with the exception of the actual air units and how they're used and what they're able to do. So we're going to look at that next, guys. So this is the air tech screen. We're just going to go from left to right and discuss each type of plane and what they are capable of doing. So this is the close air support branch. We have 3 types of close air supports, each one better than the last. Currently have Typhoons unlocked. Let's take a look at them. They have 3 missions that close air support can do. Of course, they can do close air support. They can also do naval strikes, and they can do port strikes. Now, the main skill related to close air support is ground attack, and you'll see that they have a very effective ground attack. The close air support have the best ground attack in the game, which is why that's their main mission they're going to be doing. The close air support can also provide the naval strike and port strike missions. However, they're nowhere near effective as the naval bombers, but they can be used if you don't have any naval bombers. Finally, there's a button here that we can click on to show the 3D model of those. That was something recently added. It's a pretty cool little thing if you want to see what your plane looks like. Now, moving along to the fighters, we have the Spitfire model here, and we've already went over their 2 missions, the air superiority and the interception mission. They are the best at doing this. They have the high agility, and that's what's really important here, guys, is that agility. Agility gives a significant bonus in combat. So it's probably the most important ability for planes. So the fact that they have that highest agility out of all the planes allows them to perform quite well in combat. Now, while looking at the fighters, you'll notice that there's a new little indicator here that's just telling us that these particular fighters here, our light fighters, are getting a bonus from the design company that we have, and it is increasing their agility and their max speed, and we're seeing that with these 2 green arrows here. Moving along, and we'll discuss the use of heavy fighters when we get to them. Naval bombers. These are pretty self-explanatory. They do naval strikes and they do port strike, and they are the best with that 20 naval attack. If you recall, the close air support only had a naval attack of 5, so nowhere near as high. Naval targeting is the same though, so they have the same ability to target ships. But yeah, they have the best ability at striking ships, so that's what you're going to use those for. Now, you'll notice that all of the lighter model planes that we have a little icon over here in the corner of their technology. Well, these are those special plane models that I brought up earlier that are specifically researched for your aircraft carriers. So you're going to have a separate carrier model for the close air support, the fighters, and the naval bombers. That is going to have to be researched. We're currently researching one right now, actually, for our naval bombers. And you'll have to research these in order to have the next line of planes for your carriers. And this is actually a question I hear a lot. A lot of people asking how they put planes onto carriers because you can't put these regular models on there. Well, that's how you do it, guys. You just need to make sure you research that separate model, and those do need to be separately produced as well. So you'll have to produce for instance, for these fighters, you're going to have to produce a Spitfire in your equipment production, and then you're also going to have to produce the Fulmar here for your carriers. Now, next is the heavy fighters. Now, this is a question that I hear a lot, is what's the difference between the heavy fighters and the regular fighters, and when are the heavy fighters actually useful? Now, you see they still do the same exact missions here as our Spitfires, and if you're looking at your stats, you may think that the heavy fighters are a bit superior. Of course, they're a little bit more costly in both manpower and production. So you'll see here that they have a higher air defense, 15 to 12, a much higher air attack, 46 to 27. So there is the thought that maybe these might be superior, but guys, they are absolutely not. If you compare their agility to these ones here, we got a 71.5. They are being modified by that. to 30. So a pretty big difference. And I told you that they also is a modifier to combat based on which plane has more agility. Light fighters are always going to win on a one-on-one fight with the heavy fighters. So for air superiority missions, you're always going to want to use light fighters if they can do the job. So when are heavy fighters useful? Well, there's two things that heavy fighters do well. First of all, if you look at their range, 1,700 kilometers compared to the 1,000 kilometers on the light fighters. So obviously the heavy fighters have much longer range, so you're going to want to use those for to help protect your long-range bombers, or for any mission where it's going to require longer range. The heavy fighters are really your only option. The second thing is, with that higher air defense and higher air attack, the heavy fighters actually perform better when only fighting bombers. So if they're just doing this interception mission, heavy fighters are actually superior because they do higher attack, they do better air defense, and the agility of a bomber is not going to be much better than that. If we were to just take a look at some of our bombers here and their agility, fighting the close air support, they do have a higher agility, but if we were looking at like tactical bombers, we see 25 there. If we look at strategic bombers, we see 7 for them. Naval bombers, 35 there. So they do have a lower agility than those two, but overall their air defense and air attack will make up for that slight difference in agility. So heavy fighters are used for the range or when fighting bombers. Overall, heavy fighters, if you're not going to need their range, then I would suggest not even using them, because there's obviously you got to produce them, and that takes away factories from your much superior fighters. So you'd only use these if you need their range. Now we're going to skip tactical bombers and go over to strategic bombers. Strategic bombers do exactly what they say. They do the strategic bombing. It is the only mission they can do, and they are the best at doing it. So let's go ahead and move along to the tactical bombers now. Now tactical bombers are essentially the jack of all trades, master of none. If we were to compare them to some of our other bombers here, let's just see what their stats tell us. So they can provide 4 different types of missions. They can do close air support, they can do strategic bombing, they can do naval strikes, and they can do port strikes. Now looking at that close air support, we would want to compare their ground attack, and you're going to see it's 9 compared to the 15 ground attack of the close air support. So clearly not as good at doing that mission. If we were to look at their ability to do strategic bombing, they got a 14 compared to the 45 of the strategic bomber. So obviously not going to be anywhere near as efficient at doing that. We look at their naval attack. Their naval attack is actually quite decent. They can do all right with naval attack missions. Still not quite as good as the naval bombers. If we wanted to take a look at their naval attack, it is 20. So still nowhere near as high, but once again, they can perform that mission. So the nice thing about these tactical bombers is that they can do all sorts of missions. They are very versatile. Most importantly, they have very long range, nowhere near as long as range as the strategic bombers. However, much longer range than the close air support or the naval bombers. So they could do either one of those missions, the close air support or the naval strike, from much farther away than the more specialized planes can do. So they do have their uses. They can be very useful. They have much higher air defense as well than some of these other planes. So they can be incredibly useful to use if you need something very versatile, very strong, with long range. But like the heavy fighters, if you don't need to worry about range, then you should use the specialized bombers for their jobs. And with strategic bombers, you should always use them for bombing, doing strategic bombing rather than the tacticals. But maybe you don't want to invest in the research and the production in building these. And in that case, tactical bombers do give you that option for strategic bombing without having to do that. Now you notice if we scroll down here, we have more planes available. These are our jet planes, which don't unlock until 1945. Now you'll notice that we do need to get the jet engine tech before we can research this. And the jet engine tech on its own requires a separate technology as well. We're gonna have to come down here and get rocket engines before we can get the jet engines there. So they do require a bit of research, but if you get that research, you're gonna wanna get these down here in 1945. It is a ways away because these planes are pretty good. Now, the first model of the jet fighters, that's what these are. These are the jet fighters here. And if we were to just take a look at them, you can see they do the same missions as the other fighters. Now, when you build these, they're considered completely separate planes. They're jet fighters. So they will not, if you have a wing of fighters, then they will not upgrade to the jet fighters as you build them. You will have to do a separate wing for the jet fighters. So I'd like to caution you that the jet fighters are not exactly superior right from the get-go. Let's go ahead and compare their stats. So this is the Spitefuls. They are our level 3 fighters. We got the Meteors, those are our level 1 jet fighters, and then we got the Vampires, those are our level 2 jet fighters. Just comparing their stats here, you're going to notice that yes, the jet fighters do have superior defense to the fighter 3s. You'll also notice that they have superior air attack as well. They have better max speed here for both of these models. They have better air attack than the fighter 3s. However, you're going to notice that there is one important stat here, agility, that is much higher for the fighter 3s than it is for either one of our 2 jet fighters. So that agility is important, as I said before, so that does give them a little bit of a bonus. So there's the question, because we don't really know the math of how the agility works entirely. Some people wonder whether the jet fighter 1s are actually superior to the fighter 3s. There is also to consider the fact that the production is lower on the fighter 3s and there's different resources required. So that also might be something you want to consider when you're upgrading to fighter 1s. Now fighter 2s are definitely superior. You take a look at this range here. The range is a massive increase, so it pretty much essentially means that you might not have to use the heavy fighters. A lot of the other stats increase as well, so I can say pretty confidently that the jet fighter 2s are superior to the fighter 3s, so you will eventually want to upgrade. Now over here you'll see we have more jets available. You notice there are no jets available for the close air support or the naval bombers, and that's because you're meant to start focusing on these heavier aircraft when it comes to the jet engines anyway. We have 2 models for those tactical bombers here. Remember those very versatile tactical bombers. If we were to take a look at the best model and compare them to the best model of our close air support and our naval bombers, you can see that they still can't compare to those naval bombers. Their naval attack's much lower, their naval targeting is much lower, so still superior to get those. And then the close air support over here, if we were to compare these two, you'll see that the ground attack is equal for the close air support. So essentially, there's really no reason to use close air support once you start going down this model here, because they're superior in every single way. Well, I'll take that back. There is one way that the close air support, or one thing they're technically better in, and that is naval targeting. They are better in that, but the naval attack is higher on these guys here. So essentially, they're far better than them. So you would probably continue using your naval bombers, but you would stop using your close air support once you went down this branch. And then we also have a jet engine model for our strategic bombers, and they're just better. They're just one more branch down here, so you would want to use those if you happen to be using strategic bombers. All right, so this is going to end our first tutorial in our new series for the 1.5 update. This will probably, a lot of this information should be useful for future updates as well, because I don't see them redoing the air system, though they may make some new additions, change some things. It shouldn't have a big revamp like it did last time. And as I said before, if you have anything you'd like for me to cover in the tutorial, go ahead and put that down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, please leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel for more tutorials. I also do lots of Let's Plays of Hearts of Iron on the channel. I usually always have a Hearts of Iron Let's Play going, so you can go check some of those out. Those can often be a better method for learning how to play the game, because this really just teaches you the numbers, the theory to how to play. It doesn't really show you in practice how to actually do so. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you check out some of my other tutorials, whether it's the older ones, which much of that information is still useful, or whether it's this new series. I hope to see you on another video, and thanks for watching, guys.